season growth.
I know, like, what the hell?
Welcome to our UCLA Extension Department of Business, Management, and Legal Programs video lecture series on entrepreneurship, new venture formation, and strategic business plan development. The video you are about to watch gives instructions on how to develop an organizational structure. I'm Harry Redinger, your instructor. There is a total of over 40 videos in this lecture series, which are all integrated into our UCLA Extension online course management program, Canvas. Each video strives to be brief and will have a bit of overlap to tie our curriculum together. Okay, we're getting into a subject matter that is key to the success of any organization. As we've been promoting and chatting and talking about throughout our curriculum, that businesses that develop and implement a business plan earn 10 times more in profit, statistically speaking, than firms the same size and market niche that don't. And there's 4 primary reasons why. 1, they've developed a mission statement. They've established what they're selling, to whom they're selling, and what makes them competitively different, and they treat that like a law, so they can tap the power of being consistent. Second, they've developed a vision of success statement. They have said these are the market opportunities that we're pursuing. Our goal in 3 to 5 years is to achieve this % of market share or revenue or employees or business size in some kind of way or another. The third is that they've developed an organizational structure. And this gets into what we call the law of organizational theory, which is the division of labor leads to specialization, leads to increased output. And what we're going to be talking about in quite a bit, is that whenever we divide labor and allow it to specialize, we increase our profitability, our efficiency tenfold. And so example after example throughout the modern era, whenever organizations develop an org structure and hire and train people to specialize in different functions, they increase their output tenfold. So this first slide we're going to share with you is just states division of labor, but it goes back to, when were the Egyptians? The Egyptians go back to about I want to say the 6th or 7th century BC, something like that. I have to go do my homework. But again, you know, when we start out at some point as hunter-gatherers, and when we started building villages and communities, then we started having labor divide. There's people who do the hunting, there's people who do the farming, there's people who make the tools, there's people who do the cooking, there's people who specialize in building the homes, and as our society has evolved and grown, that areas of specialization keep dividing and dividing and dividing now. So that if you take a look at our society today, we literally have thousands of areas of occupational specialization, requiring various degrees of education or licenses, certifications, etc. But bottom line is, we all have to specialize in something. And as an entrepreneur, from an organizational leadership standpoint, you are going to have to develop an organizational structure and think out, how am I going to divide labor within my organization to hire and establish people with specialized skills to produce the goods and services established by our mission statement. So we have to have an eye for how we're going to divide labor and the ways we're going to divide labor. Now, by the way, one of the books that I've been a real fan of is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And it basically says, develop an organization like it's a franchise, even if you're not going to franchise. But it gives you the mindset to break things down to its lowest possible denominator. That way, you're not having one person do 5 different tasks, because that person up and goes, you got a big problem. So if you divide labor to simplistic functional divisions of labor in terms of tasks and functions, it's very easy now to outsource to or to advertise and hire people that have specific skills in that area. Whereas if you had someone trained in 5 different skills, it gets a little more difficult to find someone who can do all 5 of those unique skills for your organization. When dealing with the subject matter of organizational structure, the first person who comes to mind is Adam Smith. He was the one who came up with the statement of division of labor leads to specialization, leads to increased output. And this is where the assembly line comes from. This trigger sparks the whole industrial era in world history. How to break things down into mechanical parts and assemble them with an assembly line. So he came up with what we call the law of organizational theory, which, by the way, is a final exam question. So you'll be asked, what is the law of organizational theory? And I stated here, division of labor leads to specialization, which leads to increased output and profits. Adam Smith, 1776, the book, The Wealth of Nations. Along this line, also know that as an individual, if you divide what you do throughout the week, marketing on Monday and finances on Tuesday and project management on Wednesday, and research and development on Thursday, public relations on Friday. I mean, I'm just making these things up. But when you focus your effort on to do one kind of mindset kind of function throughout a day and make time for that, then you're going to be more efficient versus always shuffling around and getting in the mindset to do this, then over to the mindset to do that. And so you can have more of a specialized approach of doing what you're doing. For example, I hate doing bookkeeping and accounting and paying bills. I really have to work to get in that mindset. So, I'll put it on the calendar and I'll make sure I wake up in the morning or allocate time where I just said, okay, that's it. I'm going to shift the way I'm thinking and get into check writing, bookkeeping, filing, and because if I don't do it, I collapse. And so we have to do the functional necessary things to survive. And even so, as an individual, we can still divide labor, our own time, and then assign ourselves to do things specific days of the week or times during the day. This is a pretty key concept that kind of brings the subject matter alive from an entrepreneurial standpoint. I now want to go to Stephen Covey, who's the author of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he develops within that book, and has actually written books on it, but this is Stephen Covey's time management matrix. Time management matrix. And so let me introduce this box up here to you. At the top, we have a vertical column for urgent and a vertical column for not urgent. So urgent, it has to be done now. Time is of the essence. We can't reschedule. It's urgent. Not urgent is we set a schedule. We can do it in due process and make sure it happens. And then vertically, we have not important at the bottom and important coming across the top. So obviously in quadrant 1, we have things that are urgent and important, both urgent and important. Tasks that control your time and demand your attention now. Now. It's an emergency. Stop. Take care of it now. And so, and we can't avoid it. These things will happen. There's accidents. There's surprises. Things you just don't expect. They pop up. And so, Stephen Covey in his books, his time management matrix, we want to try to limit the amount of time that kind of stuff happens to be less than 10%. So things that we can control with assembly lines, organizational structures, job titles, job descriptions, we then want to get those into the important but not urgent. Because if things are important and urgent, you're going to burn out after a while. I mean, you can only keep up with that so much. That's it has to be done. This is crucial that something gets done. It's an emergency. So this brings us to when something comes up and we know that it's going to reoccur in some kind of way, then we want to put those things in the category of not urgent but important. And anything that falls in this category, we want to develop either a division in our organization, or we want to develop a job title, job description, and add it to one of the departments in our organization that someone is now in charge of this, overseeing it. Now, bear in mind, an organizational structure is valid whether it's a one-person firm or a 500-person firm. The size of the firm does not change the organizational structure. It's just divisions of labor. We never put an individual's name in a box. We put department names and tasks that need to be done. The second we put people's names in these boxes, then all of a sudden our organizational structure is no longer scalable. And so we want to make sure that as we hire, expand, and contract with staff and management, that we don't have to redesign our org structure every time. So we want to make sure that if we have a scalable organizational structure, and we have some examples in just a bit on how that can be done. But the most important thing for you to understand, and usually this is about 70% of our time, but anything that we can develop a job title and job description for, those are things that we would assign to quadrant 2. Things that are urgent, but they're they're important, but they're not urgent. It can be handled in due process Monday through Friday or during the normal work hours. We also have things that are urgent, but they're not important. For instance, oh, gee whiz, okay, your car is broken down, it's in the shop, you have to have your car to get to a meeting next week, and so it's urgent, but it's not important in terms of the overall health of the organization because you could always rent a car. Or let's say your assistant, your executive assistant, is getting married, and the wedding dress is not arrived yet, and this is a key person to your team, and it's a function that doesn't have anything to do with the organization, but it's important, obviously, because she's getting married this weekend, for example, and so it's important, but and it's urgent, but is it important to the overall organization? No, but we still need to make time. And so this is suggesting that we have to allocate about 10% of our time for this kind of stuff to take place. And then last but not least, we have things that are not urgent and not important. And so let's say we're at the coffee station at work, and you're making up a cup of coffee, and a colleague comes up and is making up some tea or gets a soda or something like that, and you talk about college football or pro football or basketball or the weather or those Dodgers, whatever it may be. But that's an important part of corporate culture. We've got to take time and connect with people. And that's reality. I mean, we can't go, I don't have time to talk, and we move on. That's not being very respectful. So we have to have a little, downtime to, chat with our colleagues and develop interpersonal relationships. So we would call that not urgent, not important, but it's still an important part of how you allocate time in the organization, and we'll just say we'll throw 10% of that at it. The objective of this particular diagram is to drive home the importance of when crisis or something happens, ask the question, is this going to reoccur? If it's going to reoccur, can I integrate the essence of what all went down into the organizational structure, assign it to a director, and create a job title and job description so that when it happens again, I just redirect it to that person in the organization to take care of it. We'll talk about the law of organizational theory for a little bit. And this is a classic example. If a worker performing 5 tasks can produce 5 products per day, then 5 workers can produce 25 products a day. 5 times 5. Each worker does 5 different things to produce 5 products. And we got 5 workers, so 5 times 5 is 25. Now we'll apply the law of organizational theory. If 5 workers perform a specific task, specialization of a sequence of tasks, then the 5 workers can produce tenfold 250 products a day. It's like do the process, move it down, the other person does the process and move it down. So whenever we can develop some kind of work schedule, some kind of strategy from doing something first, second, third, logistics of moving it through the line, then we're going to be 10 times more effective at what we're doing. So now I want to come to the subject matter of developing our operational mechanics. How do we do it? So we can clearly see the importance of having division of labor. We can see the importance of having people specialize. Now we have to take our organizational structure. In essence, this blossom of round circles up here symbolizes our org structure. Administration in the middle and the different departments around the outer side. We could put an org structure in there, but then our overall diagram would be a little bit too big. So this is our way of symbolizing an organizational structure. And we're soon going to learn there's 2 types of organizational structure. There's a matrix management structure, and there is a hierarchical structure, and we'll explain those in just a second. But now it's time to develop what we call and often refer to the mechanical sections or operational mechanics of the organization. And it starts with first defining the divisions of labor within the organization with an org structure. The next step here is we have what's referred to as a matrix management org structure. It's basically 2 ways that you can organize a business: matrix management or hierarchical management systems. So whenever we have projects and teams within an organization, such as an architectural firm or a construction company or a film production company, or a fast food locations of the business in different geographic locations that are coordinated and managed by a specific manager, so a team that's managed by a manager. We use this matrix management type system. So here we have project team A, B, C, D, etc., and they interface with, and now I have administration on site. I always know that administration, like accounting and bookkeeping, is a functional division of labor. And that's where, the CEO or, counsel, chief technology officer, and sometimes HR, will be in that particular department. But administration oversees and coordinates all the departments within the organization. And then we have marketing, we have production management, personnel, and accounting. So these are a little more complicated. So we usually, are dealing with people who are a little brighter and more sophisticated to work within a matrix management system, because the manager has to interface with these departments in central management within the organization. But it's an effective way for growing and expanding an organization that has many locations or teams doing totally different projects, but it's still the same organization. Such as if it's a movie production company, Team A could be Titanic. Team B could be Dracula, the Revenge of Dracula or something. So they could be movie productions, but still the administration, marketing, HR, and all that would be departments that the director for each of these teams would work with. Here's an example of a hierarchical management system where there are divisions of labor, and a good way to, and also, the hierarchical system is how the top level central manager of a matrix managed system would work. It still would be I still would have a hierarchical division or division of labor, but each of the managers deal with it. In a hierarchical system, there's just one line of communication from everyone in the organization to the president or CEO at the top. So there's a very defined channel of communication to the president or CEO. A good way to think of departments is to make a relationship between the human body and organs. So if one department goes down, the whole company could go down. Just like if one organ fails, the whole body could fail, or you could be a very sick and unhappy camper. Just like if one department of marketing doesn't work well, or financial management, accounting, and bookkeeping doesn't work well, you could have some problems relevant to either accounting or human resources or something like that. So the health of the department, just like the health of the organs in your body, is critically important to being successful. But have that mindset that that the division of labor in the organization has almost a relationship with the division of labor within the organs of your body. That kind of brings it alive in an interesting kind of abstract thinking way. Another thing that we want to drive home here is your organizational structure is actually your business model. You can think of it as your business model. And one of the objectives we have, especially as a startup organization, is building this model. And building this model in terms of phases of competitive development, there's got to be a logical sequence. And, what do we build first, second, third? And we have to put a lot of thought in that, because that's going to be key to our structure, our phase of competitive development is how are we going to amass all these scarce resources to bring life to these organs, these departments, to bring the overall company alive. Because if it's just you starting it, you're running around doing all this work, and at some point, you're going to have to start delegating the accounting and the HR or the production management and quality control, project management, shipping, receiving, etc. So, having the mindset of building a building has much in common with building a business, gives us a better understanding of division of labor and how we're going to build this organization with people and departments. A hierarchical organization, administration, as well as with matrix management, but think of it as an umbrella. It's involved and it coordinates communication, documents, leadership with everyone in the organization, and sometimes that's why I often use the orchestra conductor. Everything that the CEO or the chief operations director is to keep everyone, all the departments on the same wavelength, though they do totally different things. I think it's important to remember organizational structure, division of labor boxes are by functional divisions of labor, not by job titles or names of people. Organizational structure should be valid for a one-person firm or a 500-person firm. Another thing that's important here is we want to be careful that we don't have overlap. We don't have two departments that overlap with each other, because that's just not going to make sense. That's just inefficiency. So we want to make sure that we don't duplicate any of the functions of the organization. That's like having a general ledger chart of accounts and having two general ledger chart of accounts tracking the same expense. Well, that just doesn't make sense. So just be careful that you have clean divisions of labor so they're easily distinguishable in terms of departments, and then therefore the leadership and job descriptions, job titles, and how you reward people, how someone could be, an associate versus a vice president, or like in banks, they have several levels of vice president, executive vice president, senior executive vice president, et cetera. So divisions of labor and the titles and job descriptions within there have a lot to do with pay scale, and how much and how you pay people is something to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you develop the organizational structure for your organization. Know that within all industries have common terms and titles relevant to the positions in the organization. Many of these titles do have much to do with whether an organization is a payroll-based organization or commission broker type organization. So we see, there's commonality in the use of departments, job titles, job descriptions, unique and specific to certain industries. Here's another concept that might be helpful for you as you design your organization, and that's to take an org structure and compare and then having a deck of cards, and that deck of cards represents all the many tasks that go on within your organization. So you could probably divide these cards up and put so many cards in each one of your organizational structure boxes there. And if you're a one-person firm, there's still division of labor, and there's still all these job titles and job descriptions represented by all these cards that are distributed through the company. But if it's a one-person firm, you hold that entire deck of job titles and job descriptions in your hand, and you've got to get this stuff done some way, somehow, by yourself or by outsourcing or finding someone that will volunteer and help you. Your advisory board members. So as the organization grows, let's say you hire one employee. Well, you might take the deck of cards and split it in two, and the colleague you just hire, you do this and I'll do the other half of the stuff. It's still going to be crazy, and if you hire 10 or 12 people, now you can make them directors of various different departments, and again distribute these cards. And if you have 20 or 100 people, the cards fully get distributed. And I think there's 52 cards in a deck, I'm not quite sure, and then therefore, past 52, then there might be a group of 10 people that all do the same job titles and job functions. The beauty of this mindset and concept, let's say now all of a sudden we're in a recession and we have to shrink the size of the company. We just don't have the cash flow coming in. We have to downsize. Now we can call the cards back up and not, not change the structure of the organization or any of the job titles and job descriptions. All the way back up to the point where you might be holding all the cards yourself, and leading the organization with no employees. So this way, with org structure, a clean organizational structure, the organization can expand and contract with the ebb and flow of the marketplace, and not have to redesign itself, reinvent itself in the process of doing this. This next example up here I want to kind of give just a simple explanation or examples of like the difference between a service-based organization and a product manufacturing-based organization. So here's an example of a service company where we have estimating and bidding. It's like a general contractor, general and subcontract administration, field administration and scheduling, and then purchasing and job cost accounting. And then if we juxtapose that with a manufacturing company, we might see research and development, engineering and tool making, outsourcing, purchasing and scheduling, product assembly and packaging, quality control and plant safety, warehouse and shipping, parts, I can't quite read this, parts repair and customer service and things of that sort. So, in a way, an organizational structure is to an entrepreneur as a floor plan is to an architect. We can get a feel what the business does by just looking at the functional divisions of labor that bring life to the organization. And also, we can say this too, it's our business model. And we're soon going to find out what we do here is going to apply to the administration and management of many, many, many areas throughout the organization. So we really want to put a lot of thought in this. Less is more, less is more. So we want to have this fewest possible number of departments as we can, and each department, as best as possible, wants to divide and encourage specialized skills necessary for that department. And another little sidebar, by the way, the better you, the entrepreneur, understand these functional divisions of labor, just like if you took, taking a magnifying glass at each one, the better you understand this, the more attainable, the more achievable, the more likely it is that you're going to be able to hire and lead and evolve the growth of your organization. If you don't understand division of labor of your own organization, my God, that's just like being blind going into this whole process, and you're greatly increasing the potential for business failure. So you have to almost visualize hiring and all these people doing what they're doing, for an 8-hour day, 40-hour week, to keep expanding and growing and managing and leading this company. So it's real important that you understand the details that goes into each function. That's also why it's real important to go get experience. I mean, it's a big risk factor starting a business with no experience. Financially, from an experience, having an aura of self-confidence is all very, very, very risky. It can be done, but it's just going to be, and trust me, I've got a lot of experience doing things without having the experience before. You learn 80% of what you're going to learn the first time you do it. But it does expose you to the potential of failure because you're having to figure the stuff out, and it's much more stressful. You really don't know what you're doing. You're just trying to figure out as you go. But if you're a dyed-in-the-wool entrepreneur, that's not going to stop you. So but just bear in mind, you want to understand each of these functions very clearly before you launch your business. This other slide here just shows and is again reminding that businesses that develop and implement in a business plan earn 10 times more in profit than firms that don't for 4 basic reasons: the mission statement, the vision and success statement, and the organizational structure. So having and working with an organizational structure is just an absolute essential aspect of developing and launching and managing a business. And we're going to start to get into now a little bit of the applications of org structure. So an organizational structure helps you organize your mind. If you have these divisions of labor like organs, these are the mindsets that you have to get the stuff done. And you want to hire people who also have those kinds of mindset. But there's a sense of organizational structure. So when information comes in through these eyes and these ears, you have a structure in the back of your mind that this gets filed here, and this gets filed over here, and this gets filed over here. And relevant to Covey's time management matrix in terms of not urgent but important. And so it's going to be put in the system and queued up, be taken care of when this stuff gets taken care of on Monday or Tuesday or just when that happens. So, it gives us a sense of structure and control of all the information that comes into us. So we're not scatterbrained. So we don't have all these urgent and important things just floating around up here. What do we do first? And so for everything eventually gets filed into an org structure, and then once it's filed into a department in the org structure, then it's queued up to be, taken in terms of old business and new business kind of conscious or subconscious thinking. As a CEO, you also have to have the mindset of an orchestra conductor. So let's say this is my podium and I'm the conductor of an orchestra, and I have the wind section here and the string section there and the horn section there and the percussion section over there and all the various instruments and all those different sections. Then I have sheet music here. that has an overview of the rhythm, and I can tell by looking at this, what these different sections are doing, and now I can bring this up here and conduct this. So it's one orchestra that's all on the same wavelength, the same harmony, just like I have my marketing department over here, and my accounting and bookkeeping and human resources and project management and shipping and receiving. And again, as CEO, I'm leading with corporate culture, division of labor, brand image, emotional intelligence, values, and things of that sort as I conduct the production and leadership of the company. And this all starts with viewing everything out there from an organizational structure basis. We use the organizational structure for our weekly meeting agenda. So old business, new business administration, old business, new business accounting and bookkeeping, old business, new business project management, etc. In fact, we have a whole section on this on organization administration, a video that's later on in our curriculum. But in essence, every division within the organization, we're going to have an agenda line item for, and when we're on the subject matter of that department, we're then going to track old business that has to come back up for discussion per the corporate calendar, and then any new business that comes up. And then we're done with talking, for instance, marketing and sales. Now we're off to project management. And so do we have any old business on the corporate calendar? Do we have any new business items that have come up? Same thing too, our filing systems from computer data technology, as well as hard file filing systems or storage systems or in-basket systems, all can use our organizational structure in terms of the titles of in-baskets or the titles of file cabinet drawers to store information. So there's a logical system. So if I have to find something, if it has something to do with manufacturing management, I might go to the manufacturing management drawer of my file cabinets, pull it out, then look for things filed that are relevant to manufacture, like brochures or something. With accounting, we'd have vendor files and bills and pending and things of that sort. So keep in mind that the file cabinets and the in baskets on top of the file cabinets, that they would most likely want to be organized per how your organizational structure is designed. Same thing with like time cards, digital time cards or paper time cards. Again, the accounts that are used in allocating labor to departments, again, would use organizational structure perhaps to establish accounting systems, numbers and titles relevant to time cards. And I think I touched on this earlier, but your organizational structure will become your channels of communication. So now when you get hit by the barrage of people giving you this and this and this, now instead of being overwhelmed, you can start to take this information and file it in this category, and that category, and that category, and have a way, a template, a way of organizing the stuff so it just doesn't all come on and be a pile on top of your desk. You can take it and then put it in appropriate in basket or file or category in your head, and then deal with it next time you're dealing with all the HR stuff or accounting and bookkeeping stuff or production and manufacturing type kind of stuff. It's also good to have the organizational structure someplace where everyone sees it. This gets back to all your vision of success strategy. Having an image that shows how you're organized, everyone's just aware of that. And so they understand the channels of communication and where they are in the organization and how everybody works as a team. And the more we promote teamwork and division of labor and how we work together, we're more likely to be more effective, more efficient as a team. So your organizational structure will become your structure for job titles and job descriptions, and just how everything is organized within the company. It just becomes like an understanding of the arteries and how all the organs in your body are hooked up. Not that we look at this stuff, but there's locations, and this is where this stuff happens, and this is the function that takes place there. I put this graph up here just to kind of like symbolizes the Industrial Revolution. But division of labor and knowing how to divide your labor is absolutely the key to success for any business, and through that is actually through the law of organizational theory. It's one of the ways we tap the magic of a business. So if we do this right, this also leads to that exponential growth curve that we brought up in many of our past and to come videos on entrepreneurship, new venture formation, and strategic business plan writing. But I like this image in terms of the different categories of labor that come together to make the magic of business happen. To that note, I want to thank all of you for your progress and patience, because these videos all have taken a little bit longer than I realized, but it just shows my passion for the subject matter. To that note, we will see you at our next video.